Hi everyone, this is Nick Pollock here from Roar Lions Roar. While you're here, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you never miss any of our new content. And if you prefer to listen instead of watch, make sure you check us out on your podcast platform of choice where you can subscribe and download each new episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Go State!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Roar Lions Roar. I'm your host tonight, Matt Filipovich, joined by my phenomenal co-host, Mr. Bill DeFilippo. Bill, we are out of our normal routine, but I am excited that Penn State plays football on a Tuesday evening this week.
Yeah, Tuesday evening this week, one of the traditional New Year's Six bowls, a bowl that has been really good to Penn State over the years, but has also been really good to its opponent over the years. And like just in general, they're 60 minutes away from making a national semifinal for the first time in the James Franklin era. It's kind of funny, Matt, because like I know a lot of the pushback or a lot of the concern over the years with Penn State under James Franklin has been they never made the 14 playoff. They are now one win away from getting to that exact, the point that they have never been able to make it to under James Franklin. Only they had to, their path to get there was a little bit different than what we've been used
Also,
to.
I've been thinking about this too, Bill, now that you bring it up. Penn State was the number 4 ranked team in the CFP rankings. They were just seeded lower because of all the tie-ins. So, like, this should have been a 14 playoff era playoff team anyway, which I find interesting.
Well, I actually wonder about that because on one hand, yes. On the other, if it was a 14 playoff, I just don't think the seeding would have looked like.
Yeah.
I think the way that the way that this all works means teams could get ranked, not seeded, ranked a little bit differently. But if this was a standard 4-team playoff, are we in a situation where it's like the 1 seed is Oregon as the Big Ten champs, the 2 seed is Georgia as the SEC champs, and then Notre Dame slides up to number 3 and Boise slides up or something like that. So it's very funny because on one hand, you're right. On another hand,
we won't know.
On the other hand, there's no way to know how like the new system impacted all of this. But at the end of the day, no matter what, Penn State is now 1 win against Boise State away from getting to that point that they have never been able to get to.
Bill, off the top, I want to start talking about my experience because I haven't been on the podcast in a minute at the home playoff game, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm excited to hear this because everyone who went to the home playoff game basically said some version of it was the best not whiteout that I've ever been to.
I'm a little bit sick still, so I apologize about my voice. I'm pretty sure if you are over the age of 25 and you walk into the basement that is the first, you will leave with some kind of illness. So I think I'm still fighting that. Bill, it got to a point, Bill, where I ate dinner at the first. I had like dinner time in the first basement, so it was good to return to form.
What'd you get? All right, just got something from upstairs, brought down nice.
Yeah, and a shot of Jägermeister with it.
Did you get the tray of fries?
I did not get the tray of fries. I should have gotten the tray of fries.
Damn, that's
I know. Well, we tried to go to Brothers. None of these are sponsors. I want to get that out there. They more than happily could be though. We tried to go to Brothers, too crowded. I went to Pickles with my buddies, which was great. Great trivia bar. Love Pickles. And then we tried to go to a couple different places at like 6:30 p.m. on Friday. Lines were too long, and we're like, well, the first is open. So we spent a lot of time at the first. As for the actual game day experience, tailgate lot was a great time. If you are the group of guys who approached me outside of the porta potties and asked if I wanted a homemade limoncello shot, I want to say thank you. That was very kind of you. It was delicious. Thank you so much. Bill, it was such a fun time. The vibes were so high.
Yeah.
Everybody was so excited. Although it was cold, like you could tell people were prepared for it. The only part of me that was cold in those metal bleachers, Bill, were my toes. Like I bundled up really well. So I made it out no worse for wear. Atmosphere was great. The Dom DeLuca pick 6. I thought the place was going to explode. Like it was just a really cool thing to experience. And I'm super glad that I went. And I hope everybody who went had an equally fun time. The SMU fans I chatted with in line at the Creamery were really good sports. You know, they were like, listen, we're already miserable, so let's just get ice cream and be cold still. So they were very, very funny. Bill, I could not have had a better time at that game. It was great. I cannot recommend a playoff game more.
Now, I did not go to the game, but I actually do want to push back against one thing that you said. It didn't seem like everyone was prepared for the cold,
That's
and
true.
by that I mean Kevin
That's
Jennings,
true.
and just SMU's entire football team. It seemed like one of those games. Just Matt, as someone who was there, it seemed like one of those games where if you took a look over to SMU sideline after, you know, particularly after both of the pick
Mhm.
sixes, could you just tell that none of them wanted to be there, or did they still have a sense of like belief and excitement, like, all right, guys, we're one play away from being right back in this, or like, did you get to like, did you take a second to
So I
look for
sat
that?
behind, pretty high up though, but I
Okay,
sat behind the SMU bench, and I did like peek down to see if I could see anybody's like heads down on the SMU sideline, like kind of showing poor body language. First things
okay,
first, the entire stadium stood pretty much the entire game, which was really cool.
hell
That
yeah.
was awesome. I think part of it was because our seat, the metal bleachers had ice stuck to it, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to sit on this and then my butt will get wet from melting. So I stood for a lot of the game, and a lot of other people did too, which was very funny. But SMU fans stuck it out, and I couldn't really tell any like noticeably poor body language or like exceptionally poor body language from the SMU people. Like, obviously when you're down that
Okay,
bad in the freezing cold, and especially I think that second Dom pick was like the most heartbreaking one of them all because you basically spotted
yeah.
them a free scoring drive. And then an Italian walk-on linebacker comes in and ruins your day for the second time. Like, I think that was the
Mhm.
one moment where I'm like, oh, this could get. You could see some folks showing some frustration.
Yeah, that's not a surprise, and it's good to know that outside of Craig James and Bryson DeChambeau and whoever were in that contingent that had to fly into Williamsport, Pennsylvania, it seemed like SMU people generally had generally got the most out of their experience and
Yeah,
having
it was cool. I'm really glad I went. Cannot recommend a home playoff game enough. Should Penn State get this opportunity again, definitely go. You'll have a great time. Bill, let's close the book on Penn State
cool.
SMU 2024 and let's shift our focus to New Year's Eve, where Penn State
Yeah,
travels to, is it Glendale, Arizona? Is where the Fiesta Bowl is?
Glendale.
Glendale, Arizona, to face the third seeded Boise State Broncos. Boise State comes into the year 12-1, Mountain West champions. Their lone loss on the year, I believe, came in week 2 against the Oregon Ducks in Autzen Stadium. Ashton Genty, you can make a case he should have won the Heisman Trophy, been one of the best running backs of the decade in college football, especially this season where he has been an absolute workhorse. Maddox Madsen, their quarterback, doesn't really have to shoulder a ton of the load because of what Genty does, but that is a Boise State team that is dangerous. They were the third highest ranked Power 5 conference champion, which I think is more of an endorsement of Boise than it is an indictment of the ACC and the Big 12, because I think Boise State
I
has
agree.
been that good this year. Kickoff is 6:30 Central, so I think that's 7:30 Eastern, I want to say, and it will air on ABC. I think it is Bob Wischusen on the call alongside Lewis Riddick.
Lewis Riddick, I
Yeah,
believe
so
so.
good, decent broadcast crew. Nittany Lions, 10.5 point, 11.5 point favorites, depending on where you look at time of recording. Bill, give me your 10,000-foot view. How you feeling about this game?
I think it's a really interesting game. I think that, like you mentioned, Boise is a very, very good football team. And what you mentioned in there about their one loss coming to Oregon and Autzen Stadium obviously is correct. But the part that has to be added on to that is they lost to Oregon by 3 in Autzen Stadium. They were tied. They were actually leading in the fourth quarter of that game until Oregon tied it up with about 10 minutes left, and then they walked it off with an Atticus Sappington field
Oregon
goal
had a
as
lot of special
time
teams
expired.
help in that game, to say the least.
Yeah. It wasn't. This game was before they really took off. They had some offensive line trouble early in the season, and that solidified as the year went on, and that's a big reason why Oregon is the number 1 team in the country right now. But at the time, they were really vulnerable.
Mhm.
I mean, the week before they beat Boise, they only beat Idaho 24-14.
A good Idaho team, I
But
will say.
regardless,
Idaho's a very good FCS team. Yeah.
yeah. But regardless, there have been quote unquote better teams than Boise that have walked into Autzen Stadium and lost by more. This is a really good team. They are built around, you said arguably could have won the Heisman, Matt. I think Ashton Jeanty should have won. No disrespect to Travis Hunter at all. I just think that so basically everything that Boise does is built around having Ashton Jeanty on their football team. And he has been an absolutely box office football player. Someone who's going to be playing in the NFL for a very long time.
Can I share his stats, Bill, real quick, just so people can understand exactly
Yeah, of
what
course.
he's doing?
I pulled them right up in front of me, but you go ahead.
344 carries, which, Bill, the next highest rusher for them is Maddox Madsen with 50. So he is nearly plus 300 in terms of carries on the team. 2,497 yards, 7.3 yards per attempt, a long of 77 yards, and an insane 29 touchdowns in 13 games. Catching the ball out of the backfield, 20 catches, 116 yards, and 1 touchdown. So this is a guy, Bill, who has touched the ball over 360 times and scored 30 touchdowns.
Yeah, and James Franklin, I believe, had a quote about how like impressive it is that he hasn't worn down. He takes care of his body like a pro, and you see that in how like he's able to go out and do his business week after week, and now he's going to have 3 some odd weeks without without playing a football game. So 3 some odd weeks of rest, of recovery, of preparation, whatever you want to say. To kind of take what you just said one step further, Matt. His 344 carries are 34 more than the guy with the second most in college football, which is Army quarterback Bryson Daly. The running back with the second most is 52 carries behind him. In terms of rushing yards, 2,497. Second place nationally is Amari Hampton from UNC with 1,660. So more than 837 more yards on the ground than the guy who's in second place. Like, he is a monster. And so much of what, everything that Boise does in their running game, it's built around having Ashton Jeanty. In their passing game, it's built around the threat of Ashton Jeanty. The way that they play defense is very much built around, we think if you give us the football back, we can just choke the life out of you because we have Ashton Jeanty. So we are going to be hyper aggressive and try to force you into making mistakes. Like, it's very impressive. Jeanty was an outstanding football player coming into this year. The way he has taken his game to another level, and the way that everyone on Boise has been able to kind of take their games to another level because this running back is like a galvanizing force for them. It's super impressive. And everyone talked about how easy Penn State's path is to the national semifinal. I disagree. I do not think this is going to be an easy football game for them.
I think the thing that I'm most impressed with about Ashton Jeanty is that teams quickly figured out you have to put 7 guys in the box if you want any chance to slow him down a little bit. And I put emphasis on a little bit because even with the boxes being loaded throughout all of Mountain West play, Jeanty's been tearing defenses apart. I think Penn State has to load the box in this game and force Maddox Madsen's stats on the year just to share them. 224 completions on 361 attempts, 2,714 yards at the 62% completion percentage, 7.5 yards per attempt, 22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and he has been sacked 10 times. Maddox Madsen is not the kind of quarterback who can make the offense go burr, which is fine because Ashton Jeanty makes offense go burr. So if you're able to slow Jeanty down at a level no one else has been able to, and I think this Penn State defense is the best run defense he will face all season long. Like, you can compare what he did against Oregon, but that Oregon team is vastly different than the Oregon team we're seeing now, or to any team that exists now playing in college football. Like, everybody is so different than what they were back in week 2. So I don't think there's a lot you can take away from that Oregon game, 3 months ago at this point. But I do think that the blueprint has to be, load 8 in the box. And Bill, we'll kind of shift back around to the Boise State offense versus the Penn State defense, because I want to talk about the Penn State offense first in this game. The thing that has me most excited is it's a Drew Aller dome game. Drew in dome games has been electric for his entire career. I think he's had 3 of them. Michigan State 2023, the Peach Bowl last year, and then the Big Ten title game where I thought Aller played one of his best games. This Boise State passing defense is frankly not very good. They rank worse than Kent State in terms of passing yards allowed per game. That's not very good. Kent State is one of the worst teams I've ever seen play Power 5 conference football. No, sorry, FBS football. Excuse me. I think
they weren't very good against Power 5s this year.
That's true. That is a good point. Bill, I think this game, I think a lot of the focus the past couple of weeks, especially coming out of Oregon, has been on the Penn State running backs and them refinding their form. Allen, Singleton, they really led the charge in the playoff game against SMU. I think kind of because they had to, because the weather was so disgusting. But this, Bill, feels like a Tyler Warren and co game in the passing game. I think we're going to see Aller spin the pill. I think this could be a breakout game for Drew Aller in a standalone environment. Only game on New Year's Eve at this time before everybody's getting ready to watch the ball drop. I think we're going to see Aller really spread the ball around and get a lot of guys involved en route to what I think might be his best statistical day on the season.
Yeah, I mean the one thing that Boise State's defense does really
a lot of
well
horses.
They stop you from running the ball. Yeah, I'm going to make some pretty bad jokes about that after a couple of beers tomorrow night. Neither here nor there. Boise does not let you run the football especially well. They allow you to go for about 3.6 yards per carry, which is tied for 19th nationally. Here's where the rest of their defense is, because this is what I find so interesting in this game. Opponents are averaging 5.4 yards per play, which is 55th nationally. Opponents are converting 37.64% of their third downs, which is 48th nationally. And then you get to their passing defense. Opponents are completing 60.84% of their passes against them, which is 63rd nationally. 7.6 yards per attempt, which is tied for 81st nationally. 12.5 yards per completion, which is 88th nationally. The one thing that they do super well is they send guys after your quarterback and they get to your quarterback. They are third nationally in sacking opposing quarterbacks on 10.18% of all dropbacks. What this says to me, and there are other stats that indicate this. Josh Pate, Landon Tangwall tweeted this one out, but it's from Josh Pate. Boise's defense is 111th nationally in explosive plays allowed and second in sacks. What they're going to do is they are going to send everything they can at Drew Aller and everything they can at Penn State's offensive line and everything they can at do whatever they can to keep Tyler Warren, keep Nick Singleton in the backfield. So if they're out running routes, Boise's going to have extra guys who are attacking them. And when I look at all of this, I think as long as Drew Aller and Andy Kotelnicki can see where the pressure is going, because I don't think Boise's going to rush 4 a lot, rush 3, 4, 5, whatever a lot. And if they do, I don't think they're going to be able.
They haven't been able to get home all. Landon Tangwall has done a really good job pointing that out this week. That Boise does not get home when they just run 4. They need to bring help from elsewhere on the defense to get home, and I think that creates a humongous opportunity for these receivers in one-on-one coverage.
Not just the receivers, I will say. If you are letting Tyler Warren and Nick Singleton find big pockets of space that you are just vacating in your defense, and Drew Aller is able to get them the football, they are going to kill you. Like, that is the chess match that is very interesting here to me. On one hand, Drew, for as good as Drew has been, if he doesn't see something, it can trip him up. If he does see something, he will destroy you. Tyler Warren will destroy you. Nick Singleton will destroy you. If you put Trey Wallace in one-on-ones or Amari Evans in one-on-ones where he can run past guys, they can beat you.
Trey's got to catch the ball on the first try, though, dude. Have you noticed this? He keeps on bobbling the ball. Like, he'll make the catch a lot of the time, but, dude, he's got to just secure it on first go.
Yeah, so I do agree with that. What I will say is that if Penn State's offensive line holds up, if Drew Aller can see where pressure is coming from, and if he can get the ball out to particularly Warren and Singleton in space, this is going to be a really long evening for Boise State. But if they can disguise that stuff, if they can trick Aller, if they can basically get pressure so frequently that Penn State has to keep Warren, has to keep Singleton in, and they can't try to throw the ball down the field, this has the potential to get interesting. I don't think that second one is going to happen, but I could see a universe where it does.
I could see Penn State going a lot of 2-back sets in this. just kind of to keep one in to help and one flare out. Because Allen and Singleton have evolved into pretty decent, pass blockers, and they have been more than willing to help in protection. And I think keeping them both in the field can create a lot of confusion in terms of, okay, which one's going out, which one's staying in, who do we have to keep our eye on? If we send the blitz if we send the blitz from the wrong side, does the running back leak out pretty easily and find an explosive play through that? So there's a lot of interesting parts that Andy Kotelnicki has to work with. Bill, I floated this out there. I want to say against like the Oregon preview, if like the best strategy isn't just to let Tyler Warren get his, and then try to shut down everything else. You think Boise State might take advantage of that? Just let Warren do what he does, or do you think if Boise State's going to slow down this
No,
offense, it needs to stop 44 first and foremost?
I think that's one of those. Well, I kind of disagree with the framing because I think the way that Boise is going to try and stop Penn State's offense is to stop 15
True.
before stop anything. Try to speed Drew Aller up, try to make Drew Aller not know what he's looking at, all those sorts of things. Because I just kind of fundamentally disagree with the idea. Like, if I were to say to you, how do you think Penn State's defense is going to approach this game? Do you think they're just going to let Ashton Jeanty get him and try and shut down the running game? You'd look at me like I have three heads because you do not want the ball getting into the best player in the country's hands. It's the same thing here. Boise does not want the ball getting into Tyler Warren's hands, in part because if the ball can consistently get to Tyler Warren, then you have to start. He will score. He will rack up a ton of yardage. He will rack up a ton of receptions. Ask USC how well it works to let Tyler Warren.
But that's my thing, though. Like USC had Penn State closer.
But then here's the other thing. Penn State then does stuff off of the fact that Tyler Warren is able to get going. If your safeties have to pay a little bit more attention to him, that's when they beat you over the top. If you're not able to blitz like you want to blitz because Tyler Warren keeps finding space where you are blitzing, Drew's going to sit back there all day, have all day to throw and tear you apart and run the ball, do all these sorts of things. So I don't think it is ever a good idea to let Tyler Warren get going. I do not think it is a good idea to let Ashton Jeanty get going. I don't think it's a good idea to let Travis Hunter get going. I think there is a certain class of player who, if you let them beat you, the team is going to beat you. Like, this is not a matter of, go back to 2019 or something. Well, what if they let Jawan Johnson get going? Or what if they let it's not letting good players beat you. It's letting the best of the best beat you. And if you let the best of the best beat you, it's game over.
This kind of the way I formed this question originally was because I was thinking back to USC where Warren like set all kinds of records, and Penn State should have lost that game. Like USC, if Lincoln Riley wasn't a coward, should have beaten Penn State in that game by at least a score. So I always kind of wondered if like that strategy would ever matriculate down, and it really hasn't. And I think, you kind of convinced me there with that point about Jeanty. I think it's a little bit different between a running back and a tight end.
Sure.
But I get your broader point, and I think I may have to evolve my thinking there because you make some really good points. Bill, offensively, give me a guy you're watching who maybe, won't have the gaudiest stat line, but you think can make an interesting or important play in this game. And I'll give mine as Khalil Dinkins. It's been a while since we've seen the, oh my God, it's 4th and 3. Where's Khalil Dinkins? And I think this game is going to have such an emphasis on maintaining possessions and keeping your offense on the field because Jeanty and Boise State want to remain on the field and control the clock as much as possible. So if the opportunity comes for Penn State in a 4th and short or 4th and intermediate, I think they're going to take those opportunities. And that's kind of been Khalil Dinkins' bread and butter. So I have Dinkins as a guy I'm keeping my eye on to make some kind of important play in this game.
I will just go with the entire offensive line. I think that they have to be able to, whether it's Nick Dawkins pointing guys out, whether it's knowing how to pass guys off from Sal Wormley to Nick Dawkins or Sal Wormley to Nolan Rucci or Nolan Rucci to Sal Wormley or, same with the left side of the offensive line. I think that they need to be able, if they play as well as they've been playing these last couple of weeks against teams that are bringing 4 or 5 guys when those extra guys are going to be coming at them, I think Drew Aller is going to have all day to throw. Not all day to throw. I don't think they're going to be able to speed Drew Aller up the way that Boise needs to be able to speed Drew Aller up. But if there's even a little bit of sloppiness in Penn State's front seven. You go through the pure sack numbers. I read off their sacking quarterbacks and a little more than 10% of dropbacks, which is third nationally. Ohio State is actually second nationally in that. And Penn State's offensive line held up nicely in pass pro against Ohio State, but Ohio State doesn't blitz as like freely and as confidently.
They don't have to.
And yeah, because they don't have to, as Boise State does. Their top pass rusher, Jaden Virgin Morgan, has 10 sacks on the season. Their second best pass rusher, Ahmed Hassanian, 8.5 sacks on the year. Say Oladipo is safety, 6.5 sacks in the year. Braxton Feely, 5.5 sacks in the year. You go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 15 guys have registered a sack on the season, and they're coming from the defensive line, from the linebacker room, from corner, from safety. They're bringing this pressure from all over the place. And it's really important that Penn State's offensive line is able to see this stuff, identify this stuff, and even if it's just giving Aller an extra half second because they throw a shoulder into a guy or they pick up a blitz correctly, whatever it is, that is going to be crucial. Because while I believe Penn State will be able to move the ball on Boise for, the reasons you mentioned, Drew Aller plays great in the dome. Tyler Warren's on this football team. Nick Singleton's on this football team. Andy Kodal. I think Andy Kotelnicki, if he can get a sense of where you're bringing pressure from and respond to that, that's going to be a really big problem. But if you can't stop this pressure from getting to your quarterback or heating your quarterback up a little bit, you're not going to have a good day. And that comes down to Penn State's offensive line. So they need to have as reliable of a game, and they've played really well lately, as reliable of a game as they've had over the last couple.
Shout out to Nolan Rucci. I want to make sure I talk about this. He has really
he's been
stepped up. And I know he, PFF, poop fart, as we all know, graded him very highly. But I think Rucci is playing some phenomenal football right now. And it's really cool to see a guy like that come back in as a transfer, back to his home state where his dad played, and to really shut down an entire half of a defensive line in a playoff game was really cool to see. So shout out to Nolan Rucci and shout out to, Sal Warnley, Nick Dawkins, Vega, and Drew Shelton. Those guys are playing really good ball right now. And major credit to Phil Troutwine for making that happen. Bill, the holidays are in the rearview mirror, but that doesn't mean you can't add to your wardrobe. And if there's one place I recommend to do so, it's our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Home Field Apparel makes some of the coolest collegiate apparel in the marketplace today. Crew necks, hoodies, t-shirts. I am rocking a Penn State Nittany Lions old school t-shirt from them right now. I have the Penn State coach's jacket, which I will likely wear out to the bar for this game tomorrow. And they really do take the time to learn the history of your school, dig through the archives, and then put it on some of the most comfortable clothing I own. And our listeners can get 15% off their first order with promo code RLR24. That code is still active as of time of recording, RLR24 for 2024. And again, even though the holidays are, in the rearview mirror, with this run Penn State's on, with Penn State basketball being 11-2, there is so much exciting things happening in Happy Valley right now. I know Penn State hockey is coming to Wrigley Field, I think next week already for the, what's it called? The Frozen Confines or whatever it's called. I'm going to that game. I'm excited about it. So nice. It's always a great time to add more Penn State merch to your wardrobe. So again, promo code RLR24, 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Thank you to Homefield as always for sponsoring this podcast. And Bill, Penn State's defense, they were bad against Oregon. They were lights out against SMU. Let's get to equilibrium here a little bit. What do you think?
I wouldn't hate I don't necessarily want equilibrium. I just want Penn State's defense to dominate this football game.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. So we rattled off Maddox Madsen's stats. We talked about Ashton Genty. In the receiving game, they are led by Cam Camper, who is a Indiana transfer, a guy Tom Allen knows very well. On the year for him, 55 catches, 837 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Their tight end, Matt Lauder, 43 catches, 523 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And their number 3 option is Latrell Caples, 34 catches, 443 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Similar to Penn State, a tight end is a key point of that offense, and they've got 2 decent receivers who have clearly risen to the top of that depth chart. Again, Maddox Madsen is not the best quarterback Penn State is going to face this year, but he is scrappy. He'll hang in the pocket. He'll take hits, and he understands what he has to do for this Boise State offense to run like it wants
Yeah,
to run. So we'll kind of end talking about Genty, Bill, but let's start with the passing game because I do think Penn State is
sure.
going to get out to a good sized lead in this game. And I think that at some point, Boise State is going to have to try to throw their way back in.
Yeah, an interesting thing with Boise is that if you look through the Mountain West All Conference team, Ginty was obviously a first team. So it would have been really funny if Ashton Ginty wasn't a first team All Mountain West selection. He was shockingly a unanimous selection. But Louder, their tight end, was a first team selection. Cage Casey, and Ben Dooley, their starting left tackle and left guard, were both first team
Casey can play.
selections.
That offensive line is decent.
Yeah,
Man. They can play.
yeah, their offensive line is very good. And then you go into the honorable mentions. That's where you get to Madsen and Camper. Camper, like you mentioned, committed to Tom Allen, played 2 years in Indiana, was a really good player in his first year. I think he might have dealt with injuries in his second year. I don't remember off the top of my head. And also Indiana just
was not good.
Struggled last year. Yes. So the thing with Boise's passing offense, again, to go through the numbers here, they complete 61.93% of their passes, which is 59th nationally, 7.4 yards per attempt, which is 56th nationally, and 11.9 yards per completion, which is 63rd nationally. Madsen doesn't get sacked. He gets sacked on about 3% of his dropbacks, which is 8th nationally. But the thing with Boise that is so interesting is that even though Ginty only has 20 receptions on the year, their passing game is built around having him too. Madsen is a very smart but very physically limited quarterback. He doesn't turn the ball over, 3 interceptions in the season, 27th in QBR. He's 5'10", 203 pounds. He's not a guy who drives the ball way down the field with arm strength, with accuracy into really tight windows, that sort of thing. Actually, it was a bit of a surprise that he became their starter because they had Malachi Nelson, a former top 10 5-star quarterback recruit at USC, transfer in. A lot of people thought he was going to be the starting quarterback. Madsen ended up being
Nelson has since transferred to like UTEP now. I saw
has since transferred. Yes. So that's all whatever. If this was just a straight drop back passing game where Maddox Madsen has to beat you with his, if it gets into that situation, they're probably in some trouble. And I'm going to give credit. This is a thing that I thought I saw in watching some of their tape, and then I asked my buddy Alex Kirshner about this. It seemed to me like a lot of Boise's passing game is built around play action. It is built around the belief that they are going to hand the ball to Ashton Ginty. You are going to commit to that, and that is how they beat you when they throw the ball. Boise runs play action on 43% of their dropbacks. The national average there is about 35%.
It makes sense. Make teams think you're giving the ball to the best player.
Yeah. So every 5 dropbacks or so, 2 of them are going to be play action. This is why, not bottling up Ginty, because you're not going to do that, but getting them into situations where they can't make you think he is just automatically getting the football is going to be crucial for Penn State, because I think Penn State's back 7 can deal with Cam Camper, Matt Louder, Latrell Caples, Prince Strachan, their top options in the passing game. But it is all dependent on how can we make sure Ginty isn't killing us consistently. So if Penn State can do that, and Boise, has a good offensive line, they're going to win some of the trenches. Penn State's defensive line is going to win some of the trenches. Obviously, they haven't seen anything quite like Abdul Carter. They haven't seen anything quite like Denai Dennis Sutton and how he has been playing lately to pin their ears back and get to the quarterback. But if Penn State can get to a point where Boise's passing game isn't able to build itself around the fact that you have to worry about Ginty getting the football in the run game, then I think they're going to have a little bit of success. But if they can't bottle Ginty up enough, I think Madsen, I don't want to say can pick them apart, but can have a little more success against Penn State's passing defense than you might.
Oh, yeah. It's not going to be a Kevin Jennings situation. Madsen is too good for that to happen, Correct. And the environment is much different. When it comes to slowing down Ginty, Bill, what's your ideal number?
One touchdown. I know what you're asking.
And I'm wording it that way
I
on
don't
purpose.
know. Yeah, I don't know if I have a if they can keep him under 6 yards per
That's
carry,
the
and
number.
they can
See,
keep
all right,
him.
you went exactly where I thought you were going to go.
Yeah.
The number isn't total yards.
Okay, and they can keep him out of yeah. Well, in a way it
Okay.
is, because if Boise is able, well, kinda. If Boise is able to run the football 30 plus times in this football game, that probably means a lot of other things are going their
Right.
way. So the pure volume of letting Ashton Jeanty run the football against them, that's going to be something to track. But for the most part, if Penn State can keep him out of the end zone and can keep Boise from getting into the end zone because of the threat of having Ashton Jeanty, I think that is fine. The other important thing is you have to be able to tackle him. Guys like Tony Rojas, guys like Zaki Wheatley, who, guys who are really good players, but for one reason or another, let
They
some
don't wrap
guys
up very well.
slip through their arms. That is a big thing with Boise's defense that we didn't mention. They are one of the worst teams at wrapping up and tackling in all of college. I don't have the stats here, but that is one of the things that's a big problem with them. There have been times where Penn State isn't always the most reliable team at wrapping guys up and taking to the ground. They have to do that, and they have to keep Jeanty from the 40 to 50 to 60 yard runs. They have to keep those to 20 to 30 yard runs. Oh, they have to do a lot of things to slow him down, but if they can keep his volume at a somewhat respectable place, because they have to throw, if they could keep his yards per carry to something, he's averaging 6.3 yards per carry on the season.
Under 5. Keep him under 5.
5 or 6, something like that, and you can keep him out of the end zone more than once. I think that's probably a good thing to do. I think that's probably a path to some success for Penn State, but it's going to be a problem. Like he is maybe the most patient running back I have ever seen. I don't know if I've ever seen a running back so good at taking an extra half second to just, you look at one side of your offensive line, there's going to be a hole somewhere there. Jeanty is as good as anyone I've ever seen at taking that extra beat to scan, wait for that hole to open up, and go.
Le'Veon Bell-esque, yeah.
Penn State's defense, front seven, but entire defense has to be able to take, even if it's just make that hole a little bit smaller and make it a little less easy for him to hit it. Penn State's defense has to be able to do that. Like, this is I don't want to say a 5-alarm fire or anything like that, but this is one of those situations where you have to play a perfect football game, or else a player of Jeanty's caliber is going to tear you apart.
7 in the box? Feel right?
6 or 7.
I'm thinking
like that.
I want to see very little Lion package in this game. I want to see, the 4 down linemen. Okay. Give me Kobe King, Tony Rojas, Dom DeLuca, AJ Harris, Jalen Kimber, whoever you want to have at corner, and then Jalen Reed and Key Wheatley at safety. I don't want to see you running a lot of dime. I think the Lion is a very great thing against teams that want to spread you out, like Oregon and SMU. I think primarily the number one focus has to be getting your best tacklers on the field. And that's where I think Dom DeLuca and Kobe King are going to be very important. So I think going 7 in the box and rotating your defensive tackles a ton. Getting a lot of Kazai Izzard, getting a lot of Zane Durant, and a lot of Devon J. Thomas are going to be wildly important. This is a big this would have been a humongous opportunity for Alonzo Ford had he had stayed healthy. And I think they're really going to miss number 50. I mean, I know it's been months since he's been hurt, or about a month. But that's a glaring hole, I think, that this Boise team can take advantage of.
Yeah, Izzard having a very, very good game against SMU is something that has to be optimistic going into this, because if we as Penn State fans were just relying on Zane Durant and Devon J. Thomas having to get their asses kicked, hand out some ass whoopings for 4 straight quarters, I'd be a little concerned about that. But the fact that you have another guy in Izzard, the biggest of the bunch, the most physical of the bunch in Izzard, be able to come into something that I think is really reassuring, because Boise, 6.1 yards per rush, which shockingly is second nationally, 47.8% of their third downs they convert, which is 10th nationally. And then something that I find a little bit interesting, they are 3rd in the country in points per first half. They average 21.8 points per first half. They dropped down to about 15.8 points per second half, which is tied for 25th with
Foot off the
SMU.
gas.
Funny enough. Yes. I don't know if it's foot off the gas or more that, everyone always talks about the how physically exhausted going up against a team that runs the ball can be. I'm very interested in whether being so run heavy
Wears you down.
wears them down as well. Let me see if I could pull something up really quickly, because I'm pretty sure the site Team Rankings has let's see. What percentage? Yeah, so about here's a funny stat. 56.79% of the rushing plays that Boise runs in a game are runs, which is 35th nationally. Funny enough, they are right behind Penn State. Penn State is 34th nationally. Yeah, I mean, I was interested in whether or not they basically just run the ball so much that their entire offense gets worn down. But that's interesting, because I would have figured that a larger percentage of their offense was predicated on we're just going to hand it to Ashton over and over.
Anything you want to talk about regarding the edge rushers here? Abdul and Denai. They had great games against SMU. I think the opportunities for sacks are going to come later in the game. I don't think we're going to see Abdul Carter come out there and command a hold right away, because I do not think that they're going to try that early on. I think they're going to go after like Carter and Sutton out of necessity at some point. Anything you want to talk about there, or status quo?
I'm very interested in how frequently we see Penn State put a guy like Amin Vanover or Smith Vilbert at defensive end. And they just have Carter standing up and basically, for lack of a better word, mirroring Ginty because of his speed and his physicality and ability to shed blocks. I don't want to say exactly use him as a linebacker, but use him in a linebacker-ish way. Just so he can be the guy who meets Ginty in those holes that open up potentially. So I'm interested in that. But yeah, drop back passing game, for how good Boise has been at keeping Madsen upright. Like I mentioned, not the biggest dude on earth. I can't remember if I read off what he is listed at, but he's listed at 5'10", 203 pounds. If he's a guy that Denai Sutton or Abdul Carter can get to and envelop, they are going to get to and envelop him.
I thought about the whole, maybe Abdul can just play linebacker thing, but he's been so good as an edge rusher. Like, if the opportunity comes to rush the passer, I think you need him on the edge where he can.
Well, I do agree with that. It's more in those situations where they're going to be feeding their star running back. Does Penn State, for lack of a better term, instead of spy the quarterback, spy the running back?
All right, Bill. 42 minutes, 39 seconds into this podcast, and I can't wait another second. I need a score prediction from you. Line, Penn State minus 10.5 or 11.5, depending on where you're looking. The game, the Fiesta Bowl. Penn State 7-0 all-time in Fiesta Bowls. Boise State 3-0 all-time in Fiesta Bowls. Something has to give. Bill, what is the final score, and who heads to Miami to play either Notre Dame or Georgia in the Orange Bowl in January?
Yeah, if you've listened to this pod long enough, you know that I tend to break these games down by units and look at them by one team's offense versus the other team's defense, and then flip that around.
Special teams ignore Bill DeFilippo.
Well,
I know, I'm kidding.
Special teams, special teams, they're pretty mildly even. Doesn't Stacy Collins came from
correct,
Boise,
and he is still there.
Correct,
he's back there.
So a former member of Penn State staff has since returned from Boise since returned. But SP Plus agrees with Las Vegas that Penn State is an 11.5 point favorite in this game. Penn State actually opened as an 11-point favorite, and it moved a half point towards the Nittany Lions. When I look at this game and I'm looking at SP Plus, Penn State's defense is the number 7 unit in the country. Boise State's offense is the number 13 unit in the country. So by SP Plus, Penn State has a mild advantage there. Other side of the football, Penn State's offense is 10th nationally. Boise's defense is 47th nationally. So I think that Penn State's offense, as long as they don't turn the ball over, and Boise doesn't really turn the ball over or take it away. Both these teams are good at protecting the football. Penn State's better at taking it away. But certainly not like, neither of these teams are really going to take the football away from you. And Boise doesn't really get penalized a ton. I think as long as Penn State can give Drew Aller time to throw, he is going to put up numbers. And they're, a bit of a bold prediction for this game is I think two guys go over 100 receiving yards. One, obviously, Tyler Warren, I think is going to eat in
First
this game.
overall pick.
The other is Nick.
Whoa.
Yes, the other is Nick Singleton.
Receiving. Bill, I love this pick. That's awesome.
Yes, if Boise is going to bring pressure, the best way to beat a blitz is to throw at it. And if Penn State is getting the ball out quickly to Nick Singleton and give him acres of space to run into, I think that is something that Boise is really going to struggle to deal with. I think that Penn State's defense gets beaten by Ginty a bit. I don't think he beats them enough on his own. I think Madsen has to be able to throw the ball, and I'm just not confident that he will be able to do that consistently. I think he's a really good player. I don't think he'll be able to consistently do that enough to take some of the pressure off of Ginty. I think that, again, Ginty's going to break a few big ones. It's going to be maddening when it happens, but it's about limiting the damage with him, and when Boise has to drop back to pass, not letting them kill you. I think as I look at this game, I'm going to go with something like Penn State 34, Boise 24. I think this is going to be a really good, really fun game. But at the end of the day, when the clock hits zero and we're getting ready to celebrate the start of 2025, the first thing that we are going to know about this new year as college football fans is that Penn State is the first team that will still be playing for a national championship in the national semifinals.
Bill, I didn't trust my gut when I went with SMU.
Okay.
I didn't trust them. I thought Penn State would kill them, and I was a coward, and I didn't stand on business, and I hedged. Bill, I'm not going to be cowardly to close out the year 2024.
Okay.
Penn State 41, Boise State 14.
Jesus
Christ. I think Penn State beats them like they stole something. This Penn State offense, I think, found a different gear. I'm seeing a lot of really weird criticism of the Penn State offense from the SMU game, that they didn't look great or didn't put up a ton of points. Like, you gave up 2 drives because an Italian linebacker picked it off, and then Tony Rojas went running back mode. Like, I can't discredit the offense because the defense put up points. Though I think this Penn State offense is hitting a different gear. I think Amari Evans has 2 touchdowns. I think Grunk comes in, fourth quarter, just about. I just think, and I don't want this to sound like I'm discrediting Boise State, although I kind of am by nature of the score, but I just think this matchup is so poor for them. Like, I think this Penn State team is playing its best football down the stretch. And also, I want to factor in the rust factor of it all. It is hard to come out swinging after a lot of time off. I think the Penn State defense is going to come in locked in, get off the field quickly, which would be nice after them not doing it a lot of the season. And I think the Penn State offense rolls. I think Penn State wins this one comfortably, 42-14 or 40, whatever I said. Penn State wins comfortably, and we're having a great New Year's Eve.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that it's not like Penn State's offense, came out of the gates roaring last week. They were 325 yards a total offense, like you mentioned. Passing game didn't really get going. Hour threw for 5.8 yards per attempt. Had what I would assume is one of his lowest QBRs on the season.
I'm guessing it was. I mean, he couldn't grip the ball. Like, you could just tell.
Ohio State and Wisconsin were both lower. Obviously, Wisconsin is a big old asterisk on that. But at a certain point, Penn State, their defense spotted them 14 points, and they were able to kind of get going from there. I think Penn State's offense comes out a little bit faster. I think that, again, as long as they are able to see where the blitzes are coming from, that is going to be a big thing because Boise's going to bring pressure after pressure after pressure. But ultimately, I think Penn State ends up coming out. I think it should be a really fun game. I think any time you get a chance to watch a player of Ashton Ginty's caliber, you should take some time to appreciate that, even if that is against your team. But ultimately, I think Penn State gets the job.
What's your plans for the game? What are you doing? Watching at home? Where are you heading?
I'm either going to a bar or watching it home. Me and the boss need to sit down and talk through what our plan is going to be for New Year's, and talk to some friends, see what their plans are for New Year's. What about
I'm heading to a bar to watch the game. Pretty excited about it. One of my favorite breweries in Chicago was a place called Metropolitan Brewery, and it closed down a while back. And they made, I'm a big Kolsch fan. They made my favorite Kolsch. And this
Nice.
bar that we're going to has a deal with a different distributor who still makes that Kolsch because that brewery sold it away to a different brewery. So I'm very excited about that. And then New Year's probably just going to go home after the game, ringing it at home. Should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. Bill, anything else?
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
What
Sorry.
I was gonna say, let's we have a couple minutes here before I know you have a hard out. Want to do some like real quick thoughts on each of
Yeah,
the other three
let's do it.
quarterfinal games. Cool. What Arizona State, Texas? What do you think?
Quinn Ewers, because he's always hurt, is somehow going to have some kind of injury, and it will not affect Texas in the slightest. Arizona State, great story. Cam Scattaboo, if you get a chance to watch him, watch him. But Arizona State's top receiving threat is out for the year, and I think that makes a big difference. Give me Texas by 16 in this one.
Yeah, I think Arizona State plays so
Malik McLean's
like,
on Arizona State, by the way. So if you want to watch a former Penn
He is.
Stater, you can watch him play for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, they play so hard and they play so aggressively that I think it might take Texas back a bit, but ultimately Texas defense might be the best individual unit in the country. So I think they end up winning this game, but I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I wouldn't be surprised if it's just total chaos for a half, and then Texas kind of puts Arizona State in a sleeper hold and sees it out. Georgia Notre Dame. What do you think?
Man,
This one's going to
being out. Beck
like,
being
I'm
out is so
very excited.
fascinating. I'm so torn on this one. Like, I don't have a lean one way or another. I want it to be Georgia, and I'll leave it at that.
I think I just don't know if I can comfortably pick a quarterback who has thrown 32 passes in his collegiate career going up against Notre Dame's defense. I think it's going to be a really tough, nasty physical game, but ultimately, like, I think I'd go with Notre Dame here. But Gunnar Stockton just had a lot of time to prepare for this. So, anything could happen there, which would, so we both think Penn State moves on to the Orange Bowl, differing opinions on who they play. We both think Texas moves on to the Cotton Bowl. Rose Bowl game, Oregon, Ohio State. What do you think? Ohio State 2.5 point
Ohio State's winning this game by a field goal. Oregon had a great season. Oregon is a very, very, very good team. If the Ohio State that played against Tennessee shows up again, and if Ryan Day, for lack of a better term, got all the poop out of his pants, I think Ohio State can roll to the national championship game.
I think it's possible. Oregon was my national title pick going into all this, so I'm going to stick with them. I'm interested in the I'm interested in the possibility of Ohio State kind of falling back to earth after last week, when just about everything about that game was in their favor. They had a month off. It was at home. The shoe was electric, even if there were a ton of Vols fans there. There was a lot of like skepticism and concern about what Ohio State could do. And I do think that we saw the very best version of Ohio State. Oregon with 3 weeks off in the Rose Bowl, which should have probably more green than red in it.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, both of these teams are going to know what's coming. And I just think at the end of the day, if Ohio State has anything but its A game, because I trust Oregon to have its A game more than I do Ohio State.
That's a good point.
So I think I'll pick Oregon, but it should be an absolute instant classic for Rose Bowl nevertheless. So should be fun.
Bill, that's all I got. Anything else you want to touch on before we send the folks off into their New Year's week? It's a very weird week. We are recording this to release on Monday afternoon, late morning. Games on Tuesday, New Year's Eve on Wednesday. And then I guess people go back to work on Thursday. I have no idea.
No, New Year's Day is on Wednesday. New Year's Eve is on
I have no idea
Tuesday.
What day it is anymore. Who even knows?
Yeah, I got nothing. Just I hope everyone has a really happy and really safe New Year, and I hope that the next time that we're all together talking about Penn State football, we're doing it as we prepare to talk about another game with this Nittany Lion football season.
I completely agree. The Nittany Lions can set the program record for wins in a single season on Tuesday night. Should they beat Boise State, that would be win number 13 on the season, a major accomplishment for James Franklin at such a historic program, and I cannot wait to watch. So, like we said, the game is on Tuesday night, 6:30 Central. I don't even know, maybe 7:30 Eastern, whatever. Time zones are weird. I was in Eastern time all week. Like Nittany Lions are a 10.5, 11-point favorite. Should be a great game. Thank you, as always, for listening to this edition of Roar Lions Roar. If you liked what you heard, be sure to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a like, jump in the comments, talk about Penn State with other Penn State fans. Follow us on Twitter over at RLR blog, and be sure to follow us on Blue Sky at roarlionsroar.com. Thank you to Homefield, as always, for sponsoring this podcast. Again, it's 15% off your first order with promo code RLR24. And for my co-host, Bill DeFilippo, I'm Matt Popovits. Take care, everyone, and go State.